You're telling me your thinking is not better now in conjunction with ChatGPT than it was 3 years ago just working with Google?
It's just faster. I mean, I don't know, is it better?
That's not the question. The question is...
Stephen Kotler.
Stephen Kotler.
Best-selling author and peak performance expert.
And what does it take for you to be your best when it matters most?
He is redefining human potential.
Pattern recognition, matching like with like. Lateral thinking, this is our ability to link unlike with unlike. We humans are far superior at lateral thinking.
You tell me that an AI system can't be as creative as a human being.
There's a revolution going on in our ability to take advantage of our consciousness. This is before the next wave of neurotech, as we know, that's BCI, that's brain-computer interface.
It's a thing now. It's real.
Please keep arms and legs inside the ride at all times.
Now that's a moonshot, ladies and gentlemen.
We're here today with my dear friend, my co-author of Abundance, Bold, and The Future is Faster Than You Think. And very soon, our fourth work together, which we'll talk about.
Very exciting.
Very exciting. Stephen Kotler is a New York Times bestselling author, award-winning journalist, the executive director of the Flow Research Collective, one of the world's leading experts on human performance. He's written a number of incredible books, The Art of the Impossible. I love that. It's a great name. And as well as Stealing Fire. You got the best names for your books.
Well, Abundance, Bold. I had some help.
Well, hey, and then The Rise of Superman. That's amazing.
That was the title that, like, I had that 10 years before I had the book.
Yeah.
I just knew I had to write a book with that title because the title was so good.
And it's done amazing. You've been nominated for 3 Pulitzer Prizes, translated into over 50 languages. What's wrong with the other 130 languages
I know,
out there?
seriously.
I mean, they should really get a clue.
Yeah, soon.
Yeah.
You know what the good news is? I've been translated into languages I didn't even know still existed. That's the funny thing.
I want to hear your Audible book in the clicking language.
It's really true. You're like, wow, that's still a language. I thought that went away like 20 years ago.
Oh, my God. You've appeared in over 110 publications, including academic journals like Neuroscience, Biobehavioral Reviews, and Psychophysiology. That one just hasn't landed on my doorstep yet. And mainstream publications.
You would like that Psychophys article, though. It's It's a weird thing about mindset. We can talk about it.
Okay,
actually.
Fantastic. And you just got published today, and we'll talk about that one too. But you've been in sort of old style media like the New York Times, Wired, Atlantic Monthly, Wall Street Journal, Time, and Harvard Business Review. And along with your wife, Joy, you run a dog sanctuary. That's where I first met you. Rancho de Chihuahua. How many Chihuahuas did you have?
At our peak at one time, I think it was 50 something.
Oh my God. I couldn't deal with one.
It's a hospice care facility. We've done this work for 18 years and we've helped basically 1,200 dogs die along the way, which...
when they're yapping, sometimes I really wish they would... Anyway.
There is that. I will say that I know things about grief that you shouldn't know because it's odd. Like when you actually have that many laps through the grieving process, you start to realize, like, I think there's a 3-day neurological grief cycle where grief was a mental illness until the 20th century, and then they changed it to a psychological condition. But I think there's a 3-day grief cycle where you're actually crazy. Like, I think that was a legit diagnosis. I've wanted to do a lot of work on grief. I haven't done it yet, but I will.
But you will. Life is long. We're going to talk about AI. We'll talk about flow. We'll talk about mindsets. We'll talk about his research coming up. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So first
By
of all,
the way,
yeah.
Please keep arms and legs inside the ride at all times.
First of all, it's amazing. Happy 28-year anniversary.
Thank you. 28 years.
Do you have a lot of people in your life that you've been friends with for 28 years?
No, and I want to go back to what we were talking about with this 4 days ago, which is we were talking about legacy, which is important to you and is part of your Abundance 360 community. And I think this is true. Like when I think about what's impacted my legacy the most, if I have a legacy, whatever it is, it's my long friendships with creative entrepreneurs, without a doubt. Our friendship, my 25-year relationship with my editor, things like that. That's actually the relationships are the biggest muscle, I think, in the end.
Yeah. I want to take us back. It was about, when did we publish The Future is Faster, you think? 2020? 2019. It was just before the pandemic, like a month before the pandemic.
We were on Fox News. You don't remember this? We were on Fox News the day news leaked out of China that there was a pandemic. And do you not remember this? We're on Fox News and they found out you were a doctor. And so they're asking you all these pandemic questions. We're trying to talk about the future is faster than you think.
But a lot has happened since that we published that. And I have a list here. Like, we had a pandemic. That was a thing. AI is now a very real thing. We were talking about AI forever from in bold and future is faster, but it's a thing now. It's real.
It's real.
We'll talk about that. My full self-driving in my Tesla is no longer trying to kill me.
Right.
It works really well.
Which is, by the way, knowing how you drive, probably a good thing.
I mean, listen, there are many times where it's like, I don't trust myself. I'm going to put it on FSD because it's safer than I am as a driver.
I've ridden with you.
Yeah.
Truth. He speaks the truth.
Yeah. Starship is flying, which is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Elon is in the White House, sort of.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say to that one.
There was no predictions on that one.
Did Ray even first see that one? Is that in one of his books somewhere?
No prediction sequence there. I heard yesterday, this rumor that Jeff Bezos is going to run for president. But that's a rumor. We're just starting it right now.
Okay, good.
And then Bitcoin hits 100,000.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And
then know that not real money.
Well, I'm a big Bitcoin believer.
Kidding.
Okay. Do you own any Bitcoin?
Yes.
You do. Okay. Do you own more?
No.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay. And then quantum computing is sort of materialized.
That's the one. Because I remember reading, I don't know when David Deutsch's book on quantum computing, which is still to this day one of the most confusing books ever written on quantum computing. But I want to say it was like the early 90s. And I remember maybe I was in grad school, just out of grad school, and I remember trying to read it and just being so dazzled by the audacity of there's no way. Yeah. And here we are, quantum computing.
Yeah, Hartmut Neven, who heads Google's quantum labs and their Willow chip, which has shown with increasing qubits, there is a reduction in error rate, and that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's the realization, and for the first time ever,
that's fascinating.
I don't know, but you and I will be with Hartmut in a week's time. Yeah, we should ask him and really understand that. We're going to be having a conversation on the convergence of quantum and consciousness.
So this is a really weird ass transition, but in neural dynamics, there's this idea known as the free energy principle. It's essentially the diminishment of uncertainty, that the brain is always trying to diminish uncertainty in every situation. And one of the questions we've been asking a lot, and it's a flow question. So the question people have been starting to ask, ourselves included, is flow just a human property? Because it's a physical systems property too. And you see the same dynamics when you're looking at water flowing through pipes and whatever. And the question has been, is this actually a foundational property of the universe? And you could look at if the error rate goes down in quantum computing as you add qubits, that's an example of the free energy principle. It's uncertainty being diminished over time. And I wonder, because the uncertainty principle, the free energy principle is a mathematical principle. It doesn't have a physical reality, but it predicts almost every system in the body. And we've just extended it today, the paper that came out, into intuition and flow. So it's really now every system in the body, and we're starting to look at non-physical systems.
It's interesting, the idea that consciousness is a quantum phenomenon and that we create reality by collapsing the waveform. And until we do that, things are in superposition. So this is just funny. I'd asked Tony Robbins if he would do a particular project with me. And I left him a voice note last night. And this morning when I woke up, because he does his, he's typically up till 3 or 4 a.m. and I get my voice notes from him at 3 a.m. in the morning. And so this morning when I woke up.
That's what's wrong with the Tony Robbins conference. If you can't stay up all night, don't go.
And then I got up at 5 a.m. this morning. Right. And I see his voice note there. And I'm like, okay, the answer to my question is in superposition right now.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, can I collapse the waveform in the affirmative because it's there. There's a yes or no in that voice note. And it was just a fascinating thought.
Just because you put physics, science names on these things doesn't mean I don't think you've gone completely round the bend.
Well, hey,
But what else is new?
Yeah, craziness is a good feature to have.
You're the guy who, but I've learned when crazy shit flies out of your mouth, believe it. Because 30 years ago, you were like, no, we're going to open the private space frontier.
Oh, I want to get into the AI of it all.
Okay.
And I want to get into it through creativity. So, if I think about your fundamental abilities, what you teach, because you teach amazing programs and write amazing books, it really is about tapping into creativity in flow. And the question is AI going to enhance or destroy that? And, I kind of think there's nothing that AI can't do in the creative field. So I want to have that conversation with you. I've always wanted to.
First of all, it's a hard question. My answer, my instinctive answer, and I'll back it up with why I think this might be true. My experience with AI has been one, I think most people, especially creatives, right? You see this a lot with whether we're talking about creative entrepreneurs or creative artists. They were told things about AI. It's going to make you more productive. It's going to save you time. It's going to do a bunch of these things. And then they start playing with AI, even like a large language model, and it doesn't do those things. And they get disappointed and they walk away. Yet. But my point is what it does do is it doesn't help you do the task more quickly. It levels you up so you can do the task at a level you can't normally do. So what I see happening is AI seems to be additive on top of creativity. And what has always been the case, and this is definitely true with large language models. So let's talk about what large language models and writing for a second.
Sure.
So one of the things that's very difficult with large language models, because they're probabilistic. So they're going to the most common, the most average. The standard is great writing is like 90% of the sentence is exactly what you'd expect, and it's sort of what ChatGPT would come up with. But the last word in the sentence is going to be something totally unusual, really outside of the probability field, and that's the one that's going to land the meaning and the content and elevate it.
You mean when a human writes it?
When a human writes it.
Yeah.
Like that's usually how great writing is like most everything fits your expected pattern, and then something breaks the pattern. And that's where, when you break that pattern, the brain notices, right? So it catches your attention, and that's where meaning comes from. Large language models are not designed to do that. You can loosen the parameters. People don't do this, but it's really fun. You can go inside like ChatGPT or any of the large language models and tune their accuracy of their predictions. So you can get them to be more fanciful or more creative if you want. But what it doesn't tend to do is give you the target accuracy of a human with that kind of stuff.
I love your writing style. And I think folks should know, when we met 28 years ago, you were doing a couple of articles on me, one for GQ, one for Wired. And I'll never forget, I'm reading this article that you wrote that just got published. I think was the GQ article.
It was the GQ article.
And I'm reading, and I'm like, I literally stopped dead in my tracks as I'm reading and had an experience I've never had, which is I stopped and noticed the writing. Usually when you read something, you just read and you take. But I was like, wow, that was beautiful. And then I read on, like, that was beautiful. And I was like, this guy writes in a way I really love. And I remember calling you. I assume you remember this.
Totally.
And I said, Stephen, I want to take writing lessons from you. And that was when I was still nowhere near.
But I want to tell everybody something, because this is to me the most impressive thing. One of the more impressive things about you. So I don't know. Let's say I've taught 20 friends, not many, but like 20 friends over the years how to actually really write and really worked with them on it. Nobody practiced except you. Like I remember there was a gap between like bold and faster, where we lost touch for about a year or two. But I remember when you like came back and we were talking about pitching faster, you sent me something. And I remember reading it and I was like, holy shit, he's been practicing. Like I was so blown away. Your sentences have gotten so much better. And this is why we're having so much fun writing the new book. is
By the way, our new book is amazing.
amazing.
It's
Amazing.
the we'll talk about it later, but it's the follow-on some 14 years later to Abundance, the Future is Better Than You Think. My working name is Age of Abundance.
My working name is We Are As Gods.
Yeah, so we're going to figure out which. And by the way, if you have comments about which subtitle, which title you like, put them in the
Age of Abundance or We Are As Gods.
Yes. Okay. Anyway,
We could arm wrestle for it. Yeah.
It'll take a little longer. At the end of the day, though, it's been a blast writing this book with you, and it's moving
Really fun.
so much faster. I mean, your writing has gotten extraordinarily better. I personally think
So much better.
Yeah.
So much better. It was the novel that I just finished right before we started working on our book. It was the first time it was like, because each of my books is a little bit different, written differently, mostly because I want the challenge. Like I'll write in a particular style and be like, okay, this is great, but if I could increase the fact density per sentence or whatever it is. So everything's a stretch, and sometimes in very radically different directions. And then in this last book, the novel, it all like finally came together. I'm 57 years old, and finally like all the threads clicked.
the waveform collapsed.
The
in right
waveform
way.
collapsed, and what we're seeing in the new book is that it's like 40 years of practice kind of combining and coming together.
It's going to be awesome.
It's also, by the way, a couple things that are worth pointing out here, because we're talking about creativity, and we're both really passionate about peak performance aging. In your 50s, a bunch of cognitive skills turn on for the very first time. So it's because the two halves of your brain start talking to each other like never before. Normally,
Sounds like a marriage.
Normally they work in opposition. Sounds like a marriage too. Normally, but as you around 50, they start talking to each other. Provided creativity is what sort of unlocks it, but it increases intelligence, creativity, perspective, empathy, wisdom, which is a measurable psychological trait. So I think part of what we're seeing is actually the fact that your brain gets better with age.
It might be self-delusional, but I feel like I'm smarter and more capable than I've ever been.
I do too.
You feel about me?
Yeah. I do actually feel that about you. Oh my God.
So here's my question. If I were to take your writing, your books, and I feed that into
I've tried it.
Feed it into the best
Claude.
language model. Well, but the language models have gotten better, right?
Much better.
Gemini 2.0 and what we'll be seeing next out of OpenAI and out of the next generation of Claude, and say, okay, I want you to notice this incredible writing style. Analyze it, why it's different, how it's different. There will be a point
There's going to be
at which it can, and then I'll say, write like that. I do believe that AI is going to be able to mimic Stephen Kotler's extraordinary writing style.
My new project, which is working with creatives, one of the things I want to do is train them in AI.
So they don't feel threatened?
So they don't feel threatened, so they don't lose their jobs, so they can continue to build. What I think with AI is it raises the bottom to the middle very easily. That's really
That's right. The data is clearly there.
Right.
It definitely is leveling the playing field and taking your lowest quarter percentage operating employees or whatever and bringing them up to standard.
So what I think is also happening, but it's a lot harder to measure, or I haven't seen anybody try to measure it, is in the same way the bottom is being lifted to the middle, the top is being lifted far higher, and far, far higher.
I haven't seen that data.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that data either. I don't think anybody's looking at it, but I guarantee you that's what's happening, because I'll just give you, you're telling me your thinking is not better now in conjunction with ChatGPT than it was 3 years ago just working with Google?
It's just faster. Yes,
Okay.
It's faster. I mean, I don't know, is it better? I would have to do a lot of Googling to be able to get sort of the corpus of knowledge I can get out of Gemini or ChatGPT when I ask it a question like, help me think about the different dimensions of this, or help me understand how I might, structure this.
So let me answer your question from just a psychological, neurobiological perspective. ChatGPT, all the AIs is general. They're pattern recognition systems.
Sure.
That's what they are. And pattern recognition is like with like. It's matching like with like, and it's finding closer flung connections. AI is going to be better at that than humans. Already is, probably. Lateral thinking is outside the box thinking. It's the thing that mainly gets amplified in flow. This is our ability to link unlike with unlike. It's really far flung connections between very, very different things.
Which is where innovation comes from.
Which is where innovation comes from. So we humans are far superior at lateral thinking. In fact, most AIs are literally designed not to do that. They're convergent thinkers. They're not divergent thinkers. You can play with it, and you can, as I said, you can get inside ChatGPT and muck around and try to get it to think more laterally. And it's like you have to experiment with it.
But let me take you forward, right?
You think that ability is going to come on?
I think.
In AI.
Listen, at the end of the day, if Elon is correct in his extrapolation. And
I disagree with Elon on many things. But
I understand, but this doesn't come from just him. It comes from a multitude of people.
I know.
And one of the conversations here in 2025 is, have we achieved AGI? What the hell is AGI in the first place? It's a blurry line, but artificial general intelligence. And then how many generations are we away from an iterative improvement that gets us to digital superintelligence? So are you telling me that, okay, maybe let's say it's not a billionfold better, or even a millionfold, but 1,000 times better, right? You're telling me that an AI system that is 1,000 times better can't be as creative in every discipline as a human being?
That's not the question. The answer to that is yes, probably. The question is that AI going to be more creative without a human in the chain or with a human in the chain? If you put up the AI that's 1,000 times smarter than me versus me working with an AI.
Let me tell you the data that just came out. So this is a few months old now. I've talked about this along with Salim Ismail on my episode WTF, Just Happened in Tech. There was a study done in which an AI chatbot, a physician on their own was given data to analyze a medical condition or a number of medical conditions, and they hit something like 75% correct. When they partnered with an AI chatbot, they got like 80% correct. But the AI chatbot on its own, without the human in the loop, was at like 95% correct.
But that's, again, convergent thinking, diagnosis. It's not divergent thinking. So, yes, for sure.
Okay.
I think that humans in the chain are going to be smarter than just the AI alone. Two, to me, it's a nonsensical question because creativity is so fundamental to human health and well-being. I don't think we're going to abandon it. Everybody is under this idea that like suddenly the technology is going to show up, so we're going to totally change how we're wired on the. It doesn't work.
No, we're not exactly.
Right.
Our neurobiology, in particular, our hormones, our neurotransmitters, right, which is an area that you have mastered an understanding of. So I have so many ways to go here. One of my biggest concerns, I was up at Stanford giving a talk on this, is that if AI and humanoid robotics make our living so automagical, so easy, so automatic, and we no longer are challenged, when we no longer have difficulties to overcome, are we able to survive as humans?
Yeah, I mean, certainly with flow, flow states have triggers, and the most important one is the challenge skills balance, right? We drop into flow when the challenge of whatever task we're doing is like 4 or 5% greater than our skill set.
Yeah.
We stretch, and that focuses our attention and drives dopamine into the system and blah, 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 drives us into flow. That's fundamental hardwiring, and we can't, the data on flow at this point, happiness, well-being, meaning, overall life satisfaction, purpose, all those things that we're going to need no matter what. And really one of the things that we're looking at in the new book, right, is how do you sustain those things in an automagical world?
Yeah.
To me, first of all, I'm already seeing it, made by humans is like a tag. You know what I mean? In fact, the new novel, I thought for a while that I was going to publish it as Stephen Kotler and Friends, and with parentheses under it, made by humans. just
How about Stephen
just to do
Kotler
it.
and Human Friends?
And Human Friends, we could do that.
So have we discussed the Universe 25 experiment?
No. I don't even know
So
what that
this
is.
was in the 60s in New York. A well-known psychologist basically builds a luxurious habitat for rats. Okay, something that was massive, and you can see the images if you Google Universe 25. And there was going to be as much food as they wanted, as much nesting space as they wanted, as much area to go. And they start with 4 breeding pairs, and they put them in Universe 25, and they started breeding and living, loving life. And you watch as at the end of this process, they die out. The entire population of rats die out
Because there's no challenge.
because there's no challenge. There is, and we can go into it in more detail. We probably will in Age of Abundance.
We are as
We are as gods, yes. Anyway, and it's fascinating. And I think about that. If all of a sudden, as a creative, everything you wanted to do was doable by the snap of a finger, the joy of writing, the joy of art, the joy of building a company, the joy of whatever becomes far less. And I'm trying to understand how we deal with that, because we all know if you enter a video game and the video game is too hard, you give up. If the video game is too easy, you give up. It's got to be
right
just
in the sweet spot.
just in that
That
sweet
4
spot.
5%.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if at the end of the day, when there is this incredible digital superintelligence and humanoid robotics and automation, and we live in what we talked about as a technological socialism where technology is taking care of you, not the state, whether we revert to virtual worlds where always that level of challenge is just the right level.
Well, I've said for a while that the singularity I'm paying the most attention to is when VR gets to the point that it can produce the full suite of when we can have more pleasurable, more exciting, more interesting experiences inside the simulation than in reality. Do we migrate into virtual worlds has been the question I've been asking for a while. And VR, of all the techs we've been looking at, it's the one that seems to be lagging the most, at least.
But AI will enable it massively.
I agree with that.
I mean, is this the answer to Fermi's paradox?
That's an interesting
Right,
question.
which is, Fermi's paradox, for those who don't know, is the notion of where is all the alien life? We should, even at a slow replication and travel rate, they should be here by now.
Right. Somebody should contact us.
And the question of, there's a whole bunch of media right now that, in fact, they have contacted us.
Right,
It's
exactly.
been the last 50 years since World War I. I love a recent conversation I had with somebody where we saw a flurry of UFO sightings when the nuclear bomb was being created. Right.
Oh, wow.
And now we're seeing a flurry of UFO sightings when AI is on the exponential rise. So are the aliens here to make sure we don't destroy ourselves in these inflection points in human society?
They're helping us along. Here, have nuclear power. Here, have AI. We're coming for your planet in a second, but we don't have to do the hard work of killing you. You guys are going to do it for us. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to avoid that rabbit hole. I still so there's a handful of questions here. One is we seem to think, and technology is some kind of incredibly unstoppable force where we don't make decisions afterwards. Like once it's out of the box, and that's what I've said before is, and we're seeing this, and we're doing it right now as a society. Social media broke the world. Mm-hmm. And it broke the world because it's a massively addictive technology that was sprung on the world without, we didn't know it had all the negative effects and blah, blah, blah. Now it's 20 years later and we're saying, oh no, wait a minute. Maybe it's not a good idea for our kids to be on social media all the time. Maybe we need to rethink how we interact with this particular tool. I think that's going to happen with AI. I think that's what happens when we when our technology starts to exceed our best capacities in that way, I think we come to a point where we're like, we're humans. We can make a decision here to not engage. I think you're going to start seeing AI-free countries. I think you're going to start seeing technology countries where they're like, no, we're good with the technology here. We're gonna stop. We're gonna draw the line there. I think these kinds of changes are going to start coming.
So you gave me some numbers last night when we were hanging out having dinner about the size of the creative economy. And as we're talking about AI and creativity, could you recount this?
Yeah. So here's this. It's interesting. If you're interested in sort of impacting your bottom line, where should you skill up? And I would creative flow would be my answer. And so the creative economy has tripled in size in the past 15 years. So that
are you defining creative economy?
Okay. So let's back this up. So usually when you think about this, you think about urban planner and economist Richard Florida, who wrote The Rise of the Creative Classes. And he had two categories of creatives in there. There were professional creatives and the super creative core. Super creative core are folks like us. They're creative entrepreneurs, creative artists, creative writers, these people who are inventing culture, inventing the future. And creative professionals are things like you're a doctor, you're an accountant, you're trying to bring in novelty and new techniques and be creative inside the discipline. And those are the two classes. When you look at both of them, they both exploded. The super creative core went from like 100 million people to 300 million people. Mm-hmm. The numbers in America are, it's $1 trillion economy. And it's interesting because Adobe's State of Create study, Adobe's done a bunch of really great studies. Like once every 5 years, they do a global study on creativity. They're phenomenal studies, and they've started them back in the 2000s. In their 2016 study, they found that creatives and people who use creativity in their work out-earn non-creatives by 13%. It's in America, it's $1 trillion economy. Globally, it's like a $3 trillion economy or $3.2 trillion economy. So it's a big chunk. In America, it's like 4.5% of the GDP comes out of creativity. So and it's the fastest growing sector, and for good reason. Back in 2010, IBM did a very famous study of CEOs. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to know what's the quality in the 21st century that will most help a CEO thrive. Creativity topped the list. There was a more recent study a couple years ago that looked at the same question. They came back with analytical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. And I will tell you that that's redundant, because really good analytical thinking is creative. Really good problem solving is creative. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing is essentially creativity and creative problem solving.
So bring it back to AI then. If AI is a creativity enhancing tool, mm-hmm.
Which I think it is,
which can take people who are not part of the creative community into the creative ecosystem. The question is the value in terms of earning power, in terms of being in business, going to demonetize as the number of creatives?
That's an interesting question. Here, let me go back to your AI creativity. First of all, let me give it, creativity is technically defined as the creation of novel and useful ideas. Mm. And the useful is important because it's not just enough to have something cool idea in their head. You actually have to put it in the world. You have to show it to other people. So there's risk taking involved in the creative process also at the end of it. When we look at creativity, one of the things, I know we're both interested in this. When we look at the progress in AI, people are looking at it as if it was separate from progress in consciousness hacking technologies, also on the human side of the equation. So it's not just that we're augmenting the machines, the humans are being augmented. If you think about, let's just talk about flow and creativity. So my old organization, the Flow Genome Project, did a big study with CEO leaders. We wanted to know how much more productive creative they were in flow. McKinsey did this really famous study of CEO leaders and found they were 500% more productive in flow. It was like a 10-year study, went around the globe, talked to tons of people. It's self-reported, so you always got to brain
and how long, what percentage of their working life are they in flow? Well, a small fraction.
Yeah, no, that's an open question hold on, let me get there. creativity, we found people on average were 700% more creative. That's what they reported. And we were like, God, that number's crazy. So creativity can be broken down. This psychologist named Mumford did it into 8 categories: problem identification all the way through like solution implementation. And we tried to measure those independently in flow, and we found that each of those 8 categories increases by 40 to 60%. So breaking it down, and which starts to add towards those big numbers. My point, when 30 years ago, when the AI conversation started, humans were trying to use psychology to train people into flow. And the classic example I always give is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the godfather of flow psychology, wrote a book called Flow in Sports, where he worked with the top sports psychologists, and they tried to use the psychology of flow to train up top athletes, and they sucked at it. They're bad. Like books in print, you can see their hit rate is terrible. With the Flow Research Collective, with our core flow training, Zero to Dangerous, we put.
By the way, another name I love, Zero to Dangerous.
15,000 people in 160 countries, 28 industries have taken that class.
Yeah.
On average, we see a 73.8% increase in
By the way, you know that
62.4%
62.4% of people make up stats on the spot?
On the spot. I'm not making this stat up. You can find it on our website and the data. But my point is, if you're 700% more productive in flow or more creative in flow, and we've taken it from we don't know how to train this at all to, oh no, it's reliable, it's repeatable, and that's a 73% increase in the amount of time spent in flow. So usually when people come to us, they're like, no, I get into flow maybe once, twice a week, and by the time they're done, it's twice a day, and it's pretty steady and consistent. That and this is like low tech. We haven't even started adding in there's a revolution in what you could call, for lack of a better term, consciousness raising technology, right? We saw the first wave were like meditation apps and things like that. The second wave, so for example, I have a new partnership with Vital Neuro. They make a phenomenal EEG headset. And it's a neurofeedback EEG.
Is that why you shave your hair like that?
So yes,
so you can
exactly.
Get the
so I can do
electrodes
science.
back on
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It's exactly right. But I've been watching. This is like portable EEG tech. Like I've been playing with this stuff since the early 2000s, and in the early 2000s, like I've got every single portable EEG device that's ever been made. I've got a cool display of it. They were terrible. Now they're portable. They work. And one of the reasons we partnered with them is we identified. My lab identified like 5 or 6 neural markers for flow. Was we transitioned to a flow state that nobody had ever been able to find before. And when this was 3 years ago, and 3 years ago, we were like trying to figure out, can we measure this? Can we, blah, blah, blah. We needed fMRIs, and it was $500,000 to do the experiment. We couldn't even do it. They can now measure it with this freaking portal 3 years later. And the same signal that we couldn't get it with fMRI, we can now get it here. And you know what? You just had Mary Lou Jepsen on. We just interviewed her, talked to her. Her technology takes us farther. So my point is AI is evolving. Humans and our ability, there's a revolution going on in our ability to take advantage of our consciousness. And this is before the next wave of neurotech, as we know, that's BCI, that's brain-computer interface. And that takes it to a whole other level. So it's not, humans aren't static in this picture. That's the thing that people forget when they have the AI conversation. They're like, AI is exploding. I'm like, all right, great, but you're 700% more creative in flow. And that's gone from this rare state to something that's reliable.
I can imagine having my AI, let's call it Jarvis.
For lack of a better term. Where did that word come from, Peter?
I don't know. Stephen constantly makes fun of me because in every one of our books,
Jarvis has to get
Jarvis
in
appears. I love Jarvis. I mean, I think
we're going to find a way to get Jarvis into We Are As Gods.
Okay, that's great. Right after we write Age of Abundance.
Age of Abundance.
Maybe
let's just call it Jarvis 2.0. Let's fuck it.
So listen, I can imagine if I have Jarvis on.
Yeah.
And I say maximize me in flow, that it will be able to do things as an AI to basically continuously tip me into flow.
Oh, so all the cool stuff, most of the cool stuff because we're doing a lot of work. We have my belief is that humans in flow collaborating with each other and AI are going to own the future. And is this going to be true 50 years from now, 30 years from now? I don't know. But is it going to be true for the next 10 to 15 years? Absolutely. For sure. And I think it'll be true for a lot longer, but I definitely think it's going to be true for this next period. And a lot of what we're doing We have a fully dedicated research line here. It's all on interface design. What's the flowiest interface? What's the best way to work with an AI to produce? Because I'll give you something that's really wild that never used to happen. So in that challenge skills sweet spot,
Does it have to do with your physical appearance? Or
Just going to leave it alone. Just going to leave it alone. I don't even know what I was saying anymore.
So something that happened, something really wild about AI and flow. I'm so sorry I took you off the game.
It was going to be the most insightful thing I've ever said. In fact, it was like solving for pi, and you just screwed it up. Sorry, people. I was going to solve for pi here, and
So the question is, you've described the flow state as intensely human, as an intensely human stage.
It's mammalian and insects get into flow when birds flocking. So it's actually it's older. Fish schooling.
So
that's
going back to Jarvis, I can imagine Jarvis is
interface design. That's what we were talking about. Yeah. So almost everything. This is one that I was going to tell you about. So in that challenge skills sweet spot, right? Anxiety is the upper level. So if you overload cognitive load, right, your brain can hold 7 items at once in working memory, but that's digits. If you go to something like concepts, most people tap out at 3 or 4. Right. This is why I always say,
which is amazingly
narrow
low.
It's a tiny bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't get the brain takes in, if you go by Marvin Zimmerman's calculations, and they're probably way off, it's 11 million bits of information from our senses every second. That's what they counted, believe it or not. Our bandwidth of human attention is 120 bits.
Yeah.
You're using 60 bits of attention to listen to me talk. If we're talking together and there's a faucet dripping,
I'm not noticing it.
Everybody's tapped out, right?
This is the whole basis of cognitive bias.
Yeah. So one of the things that you've noticed, we talked about it a second ago, it used to take you with Google, right, I've got an answer to a question. I need as much data as I possibly can get. You could really spend like a couple hours doing your research until you filled up your brain and like pushed yourself into anxiety, that challenge skills sweet spot. With ChatGPT or any of the AI systems, you can get such accurate information. You can overload cognitive load in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've done it where I'm researching something and I'm 10 minutes in and I've literally like blown out my brain for most of the day.
But then you can go to the LLM and say, can you please pull out the 5 most important concepts that are you can use that as a sorting mechanism.
Yes.
But going back, I do imagine that Jarvis can do things, changing music, changing difficulties, challenging me, that can hit flow triggers. And we'll talk about flow triggers later.
Yeah.
That can push me into flow. Let me read you a quote from Naval Ravikant, who's the CEO of AngelList. He recently said in an interview, "This whole idea that we can somehow make AI safe is nonsense because creativity by its nature is unbounded." What are your thoughts about the coming AGI, ASI wave and safety there? Do you have any preconceived notions?
That's a good point he's making, by the way.
I mean, this is the whole example of DeepMind with Go, right? Where it comes up with moves you've never seen
move
before.
27, right? That was the move that Lee Sodal had never seen before.
And this notion that in AI in our world, and you and I are the ultimate optimists, but I can imagine AI in our world doing things that has never been seen or conceived of before, and creating some fundamental challenges for us.
For sure. I mean, what technology hasn't created fundamental challenges for us? To me, it's so. And this is going back to We Are as Gods or Age of Abundance, whatever you want to call it. And I've said this for a really long time. And this is one of the things we're going to look at in that book is I think we have a last mile problem on the road to abundance. And we've got the technology to raise global standards of living. I mean, we've had it for a while, right?
Yeah.
We could do this.
Food, water, energy, healthcare, education, everything.
It was a done deal probably when we wrote Abundance if we wanted to apply ourselves. And definitely now. But we're not applying ourselves. So why is that? We have the technology to literally raise global standards of living, and it's not happening. And it's because we haven't figured out.
Well, let's just say it has been happening, just not at a fast enough rate.
Not at a fast enough rate, exactly. And I think the problem is that we haven't learned how to cooperate at scale. The only time we cooperate at scale globally around problems is if there's a war and the success rate there isn't so good, or a pandemic. And again, the success rate, like we cooperated for the first month of the pandemic to get us to vaccines, and then everybody sort of splintered off and, everyone in their own ways. I think that's and group flow, which is the cooperative version of, is I think going to the basis of that solution, or part of that solution, or at least a way in to look at the question. And I've maintained this for a while. But when I look at AI, I'm like, what we need to start doing is what everybody's saying. We need to have these global conversations. Otherwise, the generation we lose to AI, I think it's going to be worse than the generation we lose to social media. Right? It's people. This is, by the way, this was back in the 90s, when early days of, my field is altered states of consciousness, so psychedelic research has always been part of that. And you looked at the drug war and things like that, and everybody was very much for legalization. What the Portugal experiment, sort of that writing was on the wall a while ago. People were looking at and going, God, that might be the way. And
what was the Portugal experiment?
Portugal has completely decriminalized everything. Everything is legal in Portugal, and their drug problem continues to drop.
Better than Las Vegas.
Drop and drop and drop and drop. So their problems have actually gone away with this happening. So Portugal's been a very radical but interesting global experiment in that. And one of the points, I think, is we were always worried that if you legalize drugs, you could lose a generation, right? Because there's a generation that hasn't prepared to deal with these super addictive substances that are going to be in their lives suddenly. The same with social media, that's another super addictive substance that we were not prepared to deal with. I think AI, I think we have to start getting a little ahead of these things. Yeah. I don't think we can be playing from behind.
But the human brain, it deals with the now and the immediate next moment.
In which case, I think we're going to have a bumpy next 20 years.
But AI can deal with the long term. We can partner and say, what are the long term issues? It's just that, it's the tragedy of the commons.
Isn't everybody, most people, when they have sort of dire predictions, it's about this period, right? And maybe that's just because we're naive and we've got a recency bias and we're not thinking too far into the future and we're bad long-term planners or any of those things. Or, how do you freestyle from a creative super intelligence? How do you think past that?
So one of the questions is how do we train up the AIs? I'm fond of Mo Godot's work in which he says, listen.
Be kind to the AI.
Be kind. Yeah, AI is our progeny. Right? How we feed it, how we train it, how we educate it is the difference between Clark Kent, I forget his name from Krypton, but that young baby landing on Earth and becoming Superman because he landed in a good family and was taught values and virtues and became a superhero versus landing in a drug den in the Bronx and becoming a supervillain, right? So that AI can go either directions depending upon how it's trained up. Elon said, I want to train XAI Grok to be maximally curious and maximally truth-seeking, which sounds reasonably
sounds reasonably dangerous, like everything Elon does to me.
No. I think, if you said maximally creative, that would be dangerous.
Okay. Maximally curious?
Maximally curious to gather knowledge about his goal is that if you're sufficiently curious, you're going to determine the truth. You're going to determine the fundamentals. You'll understand first principles, what's going on. And maximally truth-seeking means you're going to learn to avoid the cognitive biases out there. One of the things I'm excited about is the notion that AI could become maximally wise. Have we had this conversation?
Yeah, we have. And I agree with you on that. Yeah. I think it's really super interesting. The other question is, and this is the one that why can't we use AI to help us steer us so we don't blow ourselves up with the AI?
And I think we will eventually, but only when it becomes a digital superintelligence. And this was the conversation at the Abundance Summit last year, which was, would you rather live in a world a decade from now with digital superintelligence, at a billion-fold increased level of intelligence, or without that capability? I, for one, would much rather live in a world where this digital superintelligence at this godlike abilities is there to help us, because we humans are still animalistic in all of our natures. We make stupid decisions, all these cognitive biases. We are short-term thinkers, and a digital superintelligence, almost like in a parental fashion, is there if the head of some large country says, I want to, says to his AI, let's go destroy that country over there. At some level of wisdom, the AI says, that's a ridiculous thing to do. Why would you want to do that? I'm just going to talk to the other AI and we're going to work out a collaboration. And I do think that is a viable end state. It's the interim stages between now and then that's of the greatest concern. How would you train up an AI? Do you have any sense from your work?
That's an interesting question.
I mean, there's Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, right? There's, maximal kindness. But at the end of the day, kindness in some circumstances means weakness, which could mean, making the wrong decisions that maximizes. What was Spock's statement in Star Trek 4? The good of the one cannot supersede the good of the many, or something like that.
The all?
Yeah, something like that.
He said the good of the all.
Yeah.
I have to think back to my Star Trek 4. I only see them just so I can talk to you about them.
I appreciate that.
They're remarkably the training. Nobody's asked me the training AI question before. I'm going to think about that one
because you're training people. You're training, meat sacks all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you train an AI?
And the interesting question is, I mean, you're asking essentially like a question about leadership, right? That also, how can a human lead in a world? Because I mean, I think one of the points you made is part of it is we're not just looking at one AI. We're looking at millions of AIs, possibly billions if everybody ends up with their individual AI. Like if we end up with a personal tutor, right? The Neil Stephenson Diamond Age idea that we
both love,
and talked about in education for a really long time. That AI is going to be with you for your whole life. So everybody's going to have,
my Jarvis, my version of Jarvis.
Your version of Jarvis. So it's really a question of like cooperative AI and cooperative humanity. It's not just a singular concept, I don't think. I still don't have any ideas. Maybe the next novel will be a crack at that one.
I really think that you should think about that.
I'm going to think about that. I'm not kidding. I think maybe the next sci-fi book is going to be around how do you do that.
All right. My next question for you, buddy. How will the development of AI creative capabilities impact research in neuroscience and creativity? So I'd like you, if you don't mind, because every time you speak about this, it's like biotech porn. What's going on in the brain? What's
let's talk about
the dance of the neurochemicals?
Let's talk about creativity. So this is really interesting. The difference. So one, creativity is a trainable skill. So everything I'm talking about, like this is a developmental process. As you become more creative, this is what happens in the brain. But I'm going to speak about it as if it was a fixed thing, but I'm not. It's a learned
By the
skill.
way, the fact that you're making that statement, I think, is really important. Having a creative mindset, and we'll talk about mindsets, right? Like I am being, first of all, saying to yourself that you're a creative person. Like a lot of people say, I'm not creative, and they shut it down. And once you shut it down, yes, you're not creative.
Now you're not creative. Yes,
it's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
So it's important for people to realize that it's
an innately human skill. We're all born with it.
Yes.
And I mean, and you'll hear about it neurobiologically.
Yeah.
So this is what's wild. If you're just looking at sort of male and female, for example, the differences between, and people ask this all the time with flow, are the differences between men and women and flow, and everybody wants those differences to be really great, and they're not. They're microscopic. Like if you look at the brains between men and women, men have more interhemispheric connectivity, and women have more connectivity between the hemispheres. But those are not absolutes, and they vary. Brains of creatives. So We have an executive attention network. This allows me to, I'm focusing on Peter, I'm blocking out all the other distractions, I'm paying attention. That's the executive attention network.
I wish my kids would activate that.
It doesn't, it's not fully formed until they're 25. It takes a while. It's trainable.
Yeah.
And then we have the default mode network, and which gets a bad rap because it's rumination lives there, self-referential thinking lives there, but so does creativity. And
Say the network name again.
Default mode network. It's where your brain goes when it's mind wandering, daydreaming mode, imagination.
When you're not living in the now.
When you're not living in the now, when your brain's taking you somewhere. And rumination is when instead of like your brain taking you into creativity, it just thinks about that shitty thing your wife said to you and you just play it over and over. That's all default mode network. Normally, most brains, these networks work in opposition.
Can you shut down the default?
Sure.
mode?
Meditation. That's one, among other things, that's one of the main things you're doing. They work in opposition. So as executive attention goes up, right, you're focused. You're no longer daydreaming. We all know this. So you start daydreaming and you're not focused. They go up and down this way. And it's actually the salience network, which is if I do this and what's that sound? That's the salience network. It switches between the two. That's what does it. So in the brains of creatives, normally this is opposition. They work together. So literally these networks are co-activated.
All of them?
No. The default mode network and the executive attention, they're co-activated. And the salience network, which is the hinge in creatives, this is what really, really happens is it gets extra flexible. So you can flop back and forth. So you can go from fully focused to thinking about an idea and wildly fully focused, right?
I can see that.
That's sort of what happens like when you're writing, right? Part of the process of learning how to write is this process of learning to toggle between I need to be focused putting the words in a sentence and, oh no, I got to come up with the next line, right? And it's this back and forth in the brain. And it gets very, very flexible in the brains of creatives. And flow tends to enhance this communication. It shuts down non-relevant structures. But even the default mode network, which really gets turned off in flow, except for the part of it that's used in creativity. So we see really stark differences in the brains of creatives versus non-creatives in a really big way. It's almost like the changes in a creative brain are, I don't know if I can make this statement across the board. It might not be a blanket statement, but like somebody who's been addicted to Coke or drugs for 20 years versus the creative brain. No, the creative brain actually has more difference than that. Like it's really profound, and you can see it. You can see it on fMRIs, and you can see it on EEG. You see network analysis of the brain. Super interesting. And
can you go into a little bit about dopamine and the neurotransmitters?
Yeah, the next side of this is the neurotransmitters that are involved in it, and dopamine and norepinephrine, which arise at the front end of a flow state. These are all pleasure drugs, and both dopamine and norepinephrine are focusing chemicals. Norepinephrine it's adrenaline in the brain, right? Noradrenaline is what they call it in Europe. We call it norepinephrine. It's essentially adrenaline in the brain. But both of these are reward chemicals. But the cool thing they do from a creative perspective is they heighten focus and excitement and attention. You know, when they're in your system, you can't not pay attention to something, right? Like
you see something amazing. You see something, a demonstration that's fascinating. You hear something that makes you think.
When I'm writing a cliffhanger story, when I teach writing, we talk about norepinephrine closes, right? Like that's what gets you to turn the page, exactly.
Yeah.
Or and dopamine is the same thing, but you tend to get dopamine from surprise instead of excitement. But the point is that both of those neurochemicals. This is interesting. Creativity is a flow trigger. When you link ideas together, pattern recognition, the brain releases dopamine. A little bit of norepinephrine, a lot of dopamine.
And it's fascinating. I can remember moments in time where, like when I was in class and the teacher is trying to teach me something, there's a moment where you don't get it and you're lost. And a moment you go, oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And
that's that aha moment.
Yeah.
Like my colleagues John Koinos and Mark Beeman map the aha moment. Like we know exactly where it is, how it happens, and it's really we'll talk a lot about my favorite part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, in a second because that's where a lot of this is living. But anyway,
you have a big one, don't you?
I do. So glad you noticed. Once again, you killed me.
So talk about dopamine and norepinephrine.
Okay. So dopamine and norepinephrine. So, by the way, the dopamine, everybody's had this experience. You do a crossword puzzle or Sudoku, when that little rush of pleasure you get when an answer's right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's what is driving video game addictions, right?
So check this out, because this is another example. Like if you've ever done crossword puzzles, you don't tend to just get one answer at a time. Usually they come in flurries, like you get 2 or 3 in a row. Why is that? It's because when you get an answer right, the brain puts dopamine into your system. Dopamine tightens focus, does all that other stuff. It enhances signal-to-noise ratios. So we find more signal in the noise. We notice more patterns. Why are we more creative in flow? One of the main reasons is because dopamine and norepinephrine both have massively amplified pattern recognition. Now, obviously, you take this too high, and you get conspiracy theorists and extreme paranoia. It's the same knob, right? It goes from creativity all the way up into conspiracy theories are just linking really disparate ideas together in really creative ways.
And rationalizing them.
It does, I mean,
that's what the brain does. It's a meaning-making machine. It will take all kinds of crazy stuff.
Well, but that's the point with the conspiracy theories. It's not only a meaning-making machine. When we understand meaning, we feel safer. The brain is trying to link together those
That's
theories.
a really important point there.
It's really important. I always say humans are really simple toys at a really basic level. Approach, avoid, valence, and arousal. Those 4 knobs control, those are the 4 knobs that control your life.
Yeah. Other neurochemicals?
In creativity, anandamide, same psychoactive that's in marijuana. It's in the endocannabinoid system, right, which is a sort of a second immune system and a stress response system. That massively amplifies lateral thinking. The other thing that happens, especially if you're talking about flow in creativity, our sense of self turns off in flow. It's we've talked about this before, but it's the same reason time passes strangely in flow. Both time and our sense of self are network effects. There are a bunch of different parts, most of the prefrontal cortex. Sometimes other stuff is working. And in flow, the brain performs an efficiency exchange. It wants as much energy as it can have for focus and attention, so it shuts down non-critical structures and repurposes the energy. Huge portions of your prefrontal cortex go down in flow, and as a result, we lose our ability to track time. So past, present, and future get pushed together into what poets talk about as, the eternal now, right?
Yes.
The moment, the deep now is a psychological term.
I had that experience. I remember I was speaking somewhere, and I was asked extemporaneously to speak about singularity or technology or whatever it was. And I remember I got the mic and had no idea what I was going to say. And I went into a flow state, and I was observing myself saying things that I really liked. And it was the strangest experience.
It's a strange experience.
It was like that was an anchor for me of what a flow state felt like.
Every time in public speaking, right, is one of those flow experiences on earth. If you have a good speech, do you have any idea what you said on stage? I'll get to the end of the speech and I'll be like, am I done? What? You know what I mean? And it's fairly common because, speaking is really flowy. It's got a lot of flow triggers built in. And I've done it a lot. So at this point, I don't.
Yeah, I don't stress about it. You go on stage and see whatever materializes.
And it's funny.
My favorite part is at the end of giving a PowerPoint keynote is the Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because these questions are coming at me, and I've heard almost every question asked, but when a new question comes.
Oh, it's so exciting.
It is exciting. And I have to pull together this data point and this data point and come up, and it's that was a pretty good answer.
No, I got to tell you something. It's because the flow stuff, I've done this for so long. I can if you ask me to speak for 20 minutes,
yes,
I know what question it's going to be my first question, my second one. If you ask me for 40 minutes, I know the first question, the second question, because it's just everybody wants to know the next bit of information.
Yeah.
I've done the 60-minute version of the talk, so I know, in the 90-minute version, and it's really funny how that happens, but I'm always excited. That's the great stuff when somebody, asks you something that kicks your head sideways and you're like, wow, I have no idea. My friend Peter asked me how I was going to train an AI today. I don't know.
But you're going to figure it out.
I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. What should entrepreneurs be focused on in this new AI-driven landscape to ensure they develop the right skills? How do you think about that? I mean, you're teaching a group of
Yeah.
different entrepreneurs.
And I'm blending a bunch of things together. Also, I'm using AI also to teach people how to like work with bias and mindset and framing. Also woven into that program. Because to me, it's all coupled together. But we can get into that. I don't think it's.
Before we forget, we forgot about the anterior. The ASC, what do you call it? Cingulate cortex.
Oh, the anterior cingulate cortex. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, let's go there.
No, I want to understand your favorite part of your brain.
Let's go there. So the ACC is really interesting because it's the part of your brain that does pattern recognition versus lateral thinking. So it decides you're facing a problem. Is it going to be super creative and come up with this wild solution, or is it going to give me safe, tried, and true? And the lever is actually anxiety. The more anxiety in your system,
you go to safe.
The more you want the safe, secure, tried, and true. This is why I always tell people for hiring, you always hire two people. You hire the person they are normally and the person they are when they're afraid. And they're radically different people,
Wow.
and it's because of the ACC. And I always, in hiring, I try to there's always a trial period if you want to come work with me, and I will stress you out in that trial period in such a way because I want to see how you're going to be when you're scared and you're failing. Because we're going to be in that situation. I'm an entrepreneur. Shit's going to go wrong. You're not going to need you to be able to be at your creative best and stay calm and do all that stuff. For years, I like to hire action sport athletes, professional action sport athletes, for this very reason, because they're used to staying very calm in making good decisions in extreme situations. Same thing with hiring out of the military.
Yeah.
You get the same thing.
Yeah. Going back to, so a lot of folks who are listening or watching us right now are entrepreneurs. And I think there's no entrepreneur on the planet that isn't diving deep into AI right now in some way, shape, or form, right? It may just be.
I see three trends. I see the trend with like a lot of creatives where they're just like, fuck this. I want nothing to do with it. They were told it was going to make them more productive or blah, blah, blah. And they tried it. It didn't work the way they thought, and they've walked away. There's a second group, and this is I fit into this category, and it's one of the reasons I'm creating the alliance is to solve this problem for myself. Also, is I like to really get great with my tools. So when I taught myself how to draw for the first year and a half, I just drew in charcoal. Then I added in ink. Like black ink, and it's now like 4 years in or 5 years.
Over the top here.
I know. So like I do the same thing with AI. I'm really great with ChatGPT and some of the large language models. Yeah. I'm okay with some of the drawing programs, but like you get into the audio and the video stuff, and I suck. Yeah. I'm right. I've got a handful of tools I'm good at, and then there's people like our friend Mike Koenig, who like every new AI tool that comes out, Mike has figured out how do you use it, how do you monetize it, how do you use it to problem solve for you, how do you blend it with other AIs. That's what I think. It's a gap, right? Because the more we get towards like a super intelligent AI, you're just going to have one system. Now you have a whole bunch of different tools you have to learn, and it's a little more complicated.
And this is, for my mind, where the creativity and the curiosity mindset comes in.
Well, this was exactly what I was about to say. My experience with all of it, my advice, and this is what I was told to do. And I didn't come to AI through all this stuff. I came in as a scientist. We've been using machine learning and a whole bunch of stuff in flow research for 20 years now. So I came in thinking, how do we use machine learning? How do we use AI to help us do better science? And then moved it into other things. But I think you have to – people are so intimidated or so they've made up their mind that they forget that the simplest thing to do is – this is what somebody told to me. They were like, they don't go – prompt this, play with the fucking system. Yeah. Just get on the system. It's free. Play.
Yes. Ask the system to teach you.
To teach you how to use the system. And I just, the same approach, one of the reasons I like teaching myself to draw, I think everybody, so one, microdosing with creativity between tasks.
What do you microdose with?
With creativity. Oh. So I'll be focused on my book, right? And then I've got a meeting and I've got a 5-minute block.
Yeah.
If you're in flow, you don't want your prefrontal cortex to turn back on, right?
Yeah.
So what do you need to avoid? Anything emotional, anything that'll get your ego fired up because the ego lives right there. So all social media is no good because it's probably going to get a rise out of you or do something and mess with that system. So there's limited things. A lot of people like low-grade physical activity, and sometimes I'll do that. I'll go for a walk or things like that. But I like a 10-minute drawing thing or whatever. And what I love, and this is the approach I take with AI, is no, people don't run this experiment, and it's fascinating. If you do something 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes a day, but you do it for a year, you're going to get excellent. You'll still.
It's amazing.
It's the coolest thing in the world to I've watched.
So what would you do for 10 minutes a day that you haven't been doing right now?
Once I get my drawing to sort of where it wants, I've already got a piano in my office, and that's the next one. Is I'm going to move into teaching myself how to play music. And yes, I know pretty soon the AI is going to be able to do it for me and everything else, but I still believe that by training up my skills and training up my consciousness raising skills at the same time, me working with AI is going to be better than without. Like the combination is going to be better. And I still think what you've been asking is, hey, Steven, I'm really, really fucking smart and I cooperate with AI. At what point is the AI going to replace me, right? At what point is the AI going to be better than just Peter and the AI together or Steven and the AI together? And I'm hoping the answer is not in our lifetime. That's what I'm hoping the answer is.
Ooh, I have a hard time believing
I have a hard time believing it too.
I think AI, the challenge is we humans have all these cognitive biases. We have a limited font of knowledge. We bias the output that an AI.
I want to talk about this for half a second. We do all those things, but people don't understand that. So let's back into creativity for a second.
Sure.
Creativity is a recombinatory process, right? The brain takes a novel information, it connects it to older ideas, it births something startlingly new. So we already talked about the fact that you're taking in 11 million bits a second, but you're only getting 120 bits. And we've talked about the negativity bias. That means 9 negative bits of information for every 1 positive bit that gets through. Yeah. And most of the negative stuff is older patterns. It's fears, right? We're scared of it because we've seen it before and it's gone wrong. So it's not new information. It's not the stuff that feeds creativity, right? One of the reasons that a gratitude practice is so helpful is it'll tune it down to 5 or 6 negative bits for every positive bit that gets through. So it basically doubles your novelty input. But if you want to mess around with those things, people don't realize this. Yes, bias is unconscious. Our frames are often unconscious, though you can make them conscious. And mindset, for a lot of people, it's unconscious unless somebody like you or me has made it conscious for them, right? But people don't realize these are knobs. These are tuning knobs.
Yes.
You can control the novelty, the information you're taking in by messing with bias and framing and mindset.
What I remind people of is, listen, our brains are large language models. They're neural nets.
Yes.
And how do you train a neural net? By showing it repeated data after data after data so that the connections that are made reflect the data. And let's talk about mindsets. I talk about an abundance mindset, an exponential mindset, a moonshot mindset, a longevity mindset, gratitude mindset, curiosity mindset are the ones that I care about, and a purpose-driven mindset most of all. And I think about the notion that people can train those mindsets by selectively choosing who they hang out with, what they read, what they listen to, what they watch. All of that is data coming into your 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections that is forming the neural connections. And that's massively powerful. Let's jump into mindsets for a moment. And I want to just talk about something you and I have discussed a lot, which is basically the notion that we have a default negative fear and scarcity mindset.
By the way, ACC, this is part of the brain we were talking about before.
Yes.
This is exactly where the scarcity mindset is going to do its most damage. Because literally by having the scarcity mindset, you're telling your brain, give me logical, give me safe, give me secure, give me something that's worked a million times before. That's what you're saying to your brain. You're basically keeping your brain in hunter-gatherer mode. Yeah. It doesn't matter that you're living in the 21st century. If that scarcity mindset, that fear-based mindset, you're keeping your brain.
How does the ACC relate to the amygdala?
It's direct. It's connected. So it directly fits. It's the amygdala is the next connection down, basically.
And for those who don't know, the amygdala is an almond-sized piece of the brain. You have two of them. Yeah.
One on each
side. That everything you see, hear, and feel, all the data you collect goes to the amygdala. It's your early warning center. And we talked about that in abundance. So we've got a challenge, which is people quickly fall into a doom mindset around AI.
Yeah, and it by the way, like the curiosity mindset is your cure here, because like until you play with it, it's scary. Once you start playing with it, you're like, oh wow, I see how this is working. I see how this is augmenting what I can do. I see the things that were frustrating me earlier. I don't think those frustrations have yet gone away, but you start figuring out what the system is good at, what it's not good at, how it. What it can do, what it can't do. I mean, I was laughing about the conversation I had with your wife last night. We were talking about, like, how do you get one of these drawing programs to render a person far in the distance?
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of, like, really basic stuff like that still doesn't work. And really answer your question.
It's okay. But let's talk about the mindset side of the equation here, because I think the point you just made that you can tune your mindset is I want everybody to get that message. So, how do you think about mindsets?
So I want to back up, because this is almost funny. So like a lot of my mindset knowledge came out of I want to say it was in Faster when we were writing Faster together.
The full name is Future is Faster.
Future is Faster than you think. Yeah. When we were writing that.
By the way, I'm still pissed that the publisher had us change the name from Convergence.
Convergence. So it should have been Convergence.
I mean, it was abundance, bold, convergence. The ABCs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Still, so I don't want the publisher to drive the name of our next book.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Okay.
By the way, whatever power you think you have in the world, publish a book and find out how little it really is. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we started having the mindset thing, this was around the time people were talking about a bunch of different mindsets. I thought it was bullshit. I was like, okay, I know there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and there's like you can see neurobiological differences between the two. And I kind of figured the scarcity mindset was going to be a hyperactive amygdala and a unactive ACC, because that made sense. But I didn't think these other things. Turns out they're all real. Like they're neurological phenomenon. I was wrong. You were totally right. Let me say that again. I was wrong. You were totally right.
We could open the episode with that, by the way.
I think you should, because I mean, what is this, the first time in 30 years?
But that these mindsets exist and that you can train them.
They're real. They're neurobiological phenomenon, and you can train them. And it's like, as you like, thinking, it's information coming in, connecting it to older ideas. We were already talking about training up the pattern recognition system. Like you're literally, the thing that I always point out to people is if you don't learn to play your brain's going to play you, right? Like you can't, it's one way or the other. Either you're going to be kind of driving or it's going to do the driving. And left to my own devices, it's bad up here. As a general rule, it's bad up here. Like one of the reasons I got into the flow work and all the work I do is because under normal conditions, not safe. And
how much have you listened to Eckhart Tolle's work at The Power of Now? And
so, I mean, I know it and all of it. You have to remember that I was living in monasteries and I've been meditating since 1986 daily.
Have you figured it out yet?
No, I still haven't. Like, in fact, by the way, I'll tell you a funny story about meditation. I had been meditating for 20 years, 25 years. Friends of mine built a neuromarketing company. They were doing movie trailers. And they bought an fMRI. They bought a 3-chip fMRI. It was down in San Diego. And I went, and they had done a bunch of work with meditating monks and Buddhist monks and Franciscan nuns and things like that. And I made them put me in the fMRI to brain image me while I was meditating. I was so sure I was doing it wrong. I was like, I don't know. I've been doing this for 20 years. And like, Nothing. I mean, I can focus and I can chant for 8 hours at a time and I can sit in the full lotus for a couple hours at a time and whatever. But like, where are the fireworks? And I was so sure I was doing it wrong. And like I got out of there. He's like, no, Steven, your brain, like he showed it to me. My brain looked exactly like long-term monks because I'd been meditating at that point for 25 years.
The hairdo looks like
the hairdo also.
Yeah, part of the equation.
Yeah. So it turns out I'm doing it right.
Oh, congratulations.
So I mean, when I came to like all that stuff with Eckhart Tolle and whatever, I was like, well, yeah, obviously. Okay. I mean, okay, yeah, you're just saying the same thing people have been saying for a very long time. What is really exciting to me now, though, is, and people don't even think about this, when I started this work in the 90s, there were a bunch of us. Rick Doblin who founded MAPS, was advocating for psychedelics. Richie Davidson and Dan Goldman, and I was at the University of Wisconsin. Richie was at the University of Wisconsin, starting in on meditation. My mentor, Dr. Andrew Newberg, was looking at like stranger spiritual and mystical experiences, speaking in tongues. And we were all interested in altered states of consciousness, different things in the brain from different angles. And you couldn't even do this research. You couldn't get funding. We had to prove, I was just talking about this with Andy Newberg. We had to spend like 1990 to 1996, almost everybody in this field, we had to prove that religion was good for you.
What?
Yeah,
Why?
that was literally that was the wedge issue. Everything we're looking at in the consciousness revolution, nobody remembers this. But after Skinner, you couldn't talk about consciousness at all. You couldn't even bring it up out loud. Christoph Koch, who we're going to be with in a couple of weeks, was he was the first person to stand up and talk about it out loud, and he could do it because he partnered with Crick, who invented discovered DNA, and you couldn't. Because of that, you couldn't mess with him. So that was the wedge issue into consciousness. But it was spirituality is good for you. We had to prove that spirituality was good for you. Uh-huh. It was health benefits, right? Because people who go to church, there's pro-social neurochemistry. Maybe there's stuff from spirituality, but there's a bunch of stuff. And we had to prove that was good for you. And then scientists were like, oh, okay, religion's good for you. We can fund this now. The National Institute of Health suddenly got involved in all that stuff. That was our wedge issue. It was the dumb. We literally, the whole field spent like 6 years trying to prove that this stuff was good for you just so we could get funding to do the kind of the basic research that we wanted to really do, which is, oh no, meditation is good for you and flow is good for you and psychedelics are really useful tools for treating X, Y, and Z.
Do you remember that movie Altered States?
Sure.
Love that.
Sure.
John
Lilly. That was the John Lilly story.
Have you
done ketamine in a sensory deprivation take?
Yes.
No, I haven't. But
I mean, don't you want to?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. John, we should do that. You know, he nearly drowned doing that. His wife had to revive him at one point because it didn't go so well. But yes, I would love to do that.
We'll put straps in place.
We need minders. But yes, like we're going to get a float tank and we're going to try ketamine in a float tank and redo. And when we wake up
would you do ketamine there? Or
well, that's what John Lilly was doing. That Altered States was actually based on ketamine. He was doing ketamine. And I think the reason is duration, right? Because DMT, it might be a more interesting experience, but it's really going to be fast. And ketamine, at least you get, with a good IV push, you can get 90 minutes of weirdness.
All right.
Yes, by the way, this is Peter and Steven on a national podcast making a plan.
You were the first person ever to speak to me about DMT. And I was just so fascinated. You told me about basically people on a DMT journey going and experiencing alien
Yeah, it was
beings.
the original Rick Strassman's. That was Rick's original work, which is the University of New Mexico, when he was doing intravenous.
Yeah, it was continuous IV
Continuous
DMT.
IV DMT. And they weren't getting like.
Was this the God molecule?
It was the God molecule.
Yeah, I read that book.
No, the God molecule was VMAT2. VMAT2 that was the God gene. No, maybe the God molecule is DMT, right? Yeah. VMAT2 is the God gene. People who have the VMAT2 gene. Turns out this was another thing that came out, same era, the 1990s, things we had to prove to do the work we're doing. Dean Hammer, who's at the NIH, found VMAT2, which is a gene that codes for norepinephrine, dopamine, and I want to say serotonin, but the third one may be wrong. But anyways, all the molecules that show up in your system when you're having spiritual experiences, mystical experiences, flow states, all that stuff. There's a very specific, so he called it the God gene. He was also the guy.
Wait. So people who have this gene are more likely to have.
They are more likely to have spiritual experiences because they produce more dopamine, norepinephrine, and I want to say it's serotonin. So they have higher baseline neurochemical levels, and they have more deeper spiritual, mystical, altered states experiences.
Fascinating.
But the God molecule, that was Rick, and he was doing, and the alien stuff was interesting, right? Because they were in a hospital, and they, instead of getting like the machine elves and the sort of the things that are much more standard in the DMT literature, people were literally like seeing gray man and having, experiments performed on them. And it was sort of a horrific, like you read about the original work of the hospital, you're like, well, it tells you everything you need to know about setting, right?
Yeah, but setting it matters a lot.
A lot.
I want to go into cognitive biases for a moment because I think it's really important, and then work into your most recent work. We wrote about this, and you introduced me to cognitive biases first. And
Peter, these are your cognitive biases? This is your bias against Stephen?
No, no. I learned about cognitive biases when back in 2010 we started writing Abundance.
Yeah.
And they're really incredibly important for people to realize. And that the brain, as you said, is deluged by information, and our ability to process that information is through a very thin straw. And so our brains evolved these heuristics, these shortcuts.
Right.
And there's like a familiarity bias,
Well, common sense. I mean, that's the most, right? Common sense is when it works, right? That's not a cognitive bias, but that's a heuristic for how do you process a fuckload of information really, really quickly and make an intelligent decision. If it works, it's called common sense. When your decision doesn't work, it was your confirmation bias or your recency bias. Or if you go to Wikipedia at this point or the DSM, there's like 500 of them, 600.
Wikipedia is crazy. It's crazy.
It's an insane list.
Really weird names. But the ones that people should realize is there is a recency bias. Like you hear our podcast conversation now, we say something that perhaps contradicts something you heard a month ago or a year ago. You're likely to believe what we are telling you now. Or there's a familiarity bias, which is when someone looks like you, dresses like you, speaks like you, you're tending to give higher value to that person. And then there's this negativity bias, which is the crisis news network, that you value negative information far more than positive information. And these are, they're dangerous in one regard because they can trick you into making really stupid decisions.
Yeah. I mean, racism, misogyny, all these things are essentially the same version. These are biases, right? Yeah. And it's the same sort of information processing issue. The thing I want to back up one step to the idea that we talked about before because it's just so important to me, which is you don't have to be the victim of your brain. These are all yes, you have all these biases, but you can train them down significantly. And by the way, both of us do this all the time. One of the best uses of AI at this point is help me see past my biases.
Oh my God.
What am I not looking at?
I can't wait for AI to, again, if you think about Jarvis as the example where it's on your body, in your body, it's around you all the time. It is your constant coach, right? And you can eventually turn on and say, Jarvis, turn on cognitive bias alert. And it will have heard everything you've ever seen. I think personally, you're going to give your AI permission to read all your emails, listen to your conversations, watch
to me, that's
what you're eating.
One of the biggest problems with the AI systems right now is their memories aren't robust enough.
We've gotten to long context memories. We're there now. Okay. And so you'll be able, you will hear a piece of data and start making a decision, and your AI will be able to say to you, listen, your cognitive biases are driving you in this direction, but in reality, you heard this and this and this. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think again, it's why I'm training people. I'm training creativity with AI. I just want to skill creatives up so they're no longer scared, and these are these are the tools, and some of the whiz bang stuff that where you can do, like, it's really easy to get under the hood on ChatGPT at the front end and like tune fill. Nobody does that, but it's a really simple dashboard, and there's a lot of power there, especially for these kinds of things. But I think that's a really it's huge. It's also frames, which are what frames are very local, and the framing is mindsets are more durational, and frames are essentially like when you're building up your abundance mindset, right? How do you do that is by reframing moment by moment basis constantly for the abundant frame. And eventually when it becomes a little more unconscious, we call it a mindset, right? Yes. And when it becomes totally deep, it becomes a bias, or we don't have a word for positive biases, but it's really like it starts as a frame that's fully conscious and goes all the way to fully unconscious.
A quick example is when you're looking for a parking spot and you have to park like 3 blocks away. You can be pissed about that, or you can flip it and say, "Oh, I get some free exercise. I get part of my 10,000 steps." That judo move is really.
So here's something. Here's this crazy experiment they did at Harvard, and they wanted to know what was more effective against anxiety: mindfulness, breath work, or reframing. And they did a study where they found literally like because anxiety and curiosity and excitement are the same neurochemical. They're all norepinephrine, right? A little bit is curiosity, a little bit more is excitement, too much is anxiety, right? None is boredom, right? I'm not curious, I'm not interested, right? That's literally, it's a spectrum. And a lot of people don't realize that anxiety, when you feel anxiety, it's much easier to turn anxiety into excitement than it is to get rid of it.
Really?
So this was the experiment they did at Harvard. When you're feeling anxious, this was the experiment. They had people say, I'm excited, I am excited, I am excited.
Literally.
3 times out loud. And it was more effective than 7 minutes of breath work and meditation at reducing stress levels.
Use that. That's
Here's
great.
something crazy. This is the wild one. You want to talk about like misogyny and culture and like weird stuff. So they did this experiment about 15 years ago, and they found that women in the study group who were over 40 had no idea what excitement felt like, because women were not supposed to get too excited and feel too much emotions. So they had repressed excitement so much. They didn't actually realize that when they did this study, so there was this whole training for women now that like has to separate anxiety from excitement and be like, these are the same, like they feel the same,
and it's
but they're
okay to be
different.
excited.
It's okay to be excited. Yeah, it's wild. So the point there is culture can come in so heavily, you know what I mean, and tilt your brain that you literally can't even recognize a core emotion.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Buddy, let's turn to Flow and your work. The Flow Research Collective is really just blown up. You've trained tens of thousands of people, and you've been at some of the biggest companies like Google. You're just at Google. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I can't speak to Google because I think I signed an NDA.
Okay. So what do you do when you're training these?
It's always, so you can get really whiz bang about a lot of stuff, and there's a million different things here, but it's very, as far as flow training is concerned, I always say there's like 5 or 6 what I call the peak performance basics. These are like, this is all the stuff we know. You got to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. Flow's a high energy state, for example. So you need that. You have to.
And do you, by the way?
Yeah, I always sleep 7 to 8 hours.
What time do you go to sleep? What time do you wake up?
I go to sleep somewhere between 8 and 9, and I wake up somewhere between 3 and 4.
Okay.
Every day.
I mean, do the math. That's barely 7 hours.
Yeah, it's about 7.5 is what I usually come in at. Probably 7.
Did you always go to sleep at that time as you
No, but I always woke up early.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, I think that's an important point. I wrote about that in Longevity Guidebook. It's like the only way to maintain a sleep schedule is when you go to sleep, because your body is likely to wake up at the same time. But when I was in college, graduate school, medical school, I would do my best work at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And
it switched.
Yeah, it flipped for me.
Yeah, I was probably the same thing. Though I was also good in the morning. I was also good. I'm good late at night too, right? There's gaps in between. One of the things I always tell people, and this is really important, and it's really hard in the modern work environment, there are extreme larks. You and I are extreme larks. We get up early. That's when our brain is most awake and most alert. Most people are on the normal work schedule. Like most people's brains start to wake up around 8 o'clock, and their peak concentrations is between 9 and 10, 10:30. And then there are night owls. I'm married to a night owl. So like, it's really fun. Like when Joy was—
What time does Joy go to sleep?
Well, if she's working on a book, she'll start writing at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and go to 4 in the morning.
Wow.
And she'll go to sleep when I'm waking up. Yeah, which is complicated.
I'll leave it at that.
Complicated.
So we were talking about the 7 things. So you began with
so
sleep.
there, you can't. Well, I was going to say is you can't fight your circadian rhythms. Like you want to try to work in accordance with your circadian rhythms, and the people who get screwed in the modern world that way are the night owls.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like the world isn't built for them at all. So you have to tune your nervous system every day, right? And I always tell people, if you have 5 minutes, do a gratitude list, right? If you have 6 minutes, read a novel. If you have 7 minutes, 7 to 11, do breath work. 11 to 15 or so, 20, go for a walk in nature. If you've got 20, get some exercise, 20 minutes or 40 minutes, get some exercise. Or take a long sauna, or like there's literally like we have a full list of like, these are the ways to reboot your nervous system and reboot your brain. And everybody wants to say, oh, I'm too busy. And I will tell people that like, depending on your anxiety level. So if you worked at the Flow Research Collective during COVID, right? We were a high performance organization training people in high performance, and I wanted my team at their best, but it was COVID, and it was especially in the beginning, everybody was scared. And I said, look, if you're going to keep your job at the Flow Research Collective, you have to do 3 of these a day, minimum 3 things to tune up your nervous system a day, because everybody was so stressed.
Yeah.
So I was making sure of it, but like you have to do that every day.
Yeah.
Right?
Arianna Huffington will be at Abundance 360 this March along with you. And she'll be speaking about the work she's doing and helping employees with these small micro nudges through the day, including gratitude.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, so there's a bunch of that stuff. And then the other things you would train, just to answer your question, there's 28 known flow triggers, preconditions that lead to more flow. There are 12 on the individual side and 16 or so on the group flow side. There's a lot of overlap between the triggers, but what do I train people in? These are the 28 flow triggers. And then the only other thing that really matters is flow is not a binary. It's not I'm in the zone or I'm out of the zone. It's actually a 4-stage cycle. So you don't get to live in a permanent flow state because it doesn't work that way in the brain. It's a cycle. And some of the stages are very unflowy, but you have to move through the complete cycle. So I teach people this cycle because that's the map of the territory. Oh, this is where I am. This is where I have to go next. This is where I have to go next.
do you actually think about that?
Oh, yeah.
You think about this is where I am and this is where I have to go next.
All the time. Well, I also, so flow is followed, let me do it quickly. On the front end of a flow state is a struggle phase. Flow is unconscious, right? It's what happens when you've loaded your brain up with a bunch of information and can put it together in a new way and like put it all together. So I always, you have to still onboard that stuff consciously, right? And that's the struggle phase.
It's like throwing shit on a piece of paper.
Right. Struggle is always followed by a release phase. You have to take your mind off the problem because you've been loading the conscious brain. You've overloaded it. And it turns out in struggle, and this is work that came out of the University of Michigan, Carlene Seifert's lab, really great work. She found that the more frustrated you get, like when you're overloading your brain, the more frustrated you get, the closer you are to actual real solution and flow. So frustration is actually really good in that situation. It feels really bad. But it needs to be followed by a release activity. A release activity is a low-grade physical activity works best to take your mind off the problem. And when I say low-grade, I don't mean go get a hard workout, a walk in nature, drawing, right? Works really, really well. So the way my schedule is, I wake up at 4, I start writing, and I write 7:38. If you and I talk, we use
7:38
in the morning. I'll write from 4 a.m. to 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay,
And the minute I'm done writing, I take my dog for a hike.
Yeah.
Why? Because if I'm in struggle, I want to follow by release. If I was in flow while I was riding on the back end of a flow state, flow is a high energy state. It's got a built-in recovery period. So you have to recover on the back end. So if I was in flow while I was riding, great. A walk in nature is a phenomenal recovery activity. It's also phenomenal relief activity. So I always say that like ultimately in the end with flow stuff, especially with like top performers, first of all, flow is how everybody performs at their best. It's like, this is how humans are hardwired. This is what optimal performance looks like. So most people, if you're in the top 20% of your field, top 30% of your field, you're good at this anyways. I'm not going to come in and totally reboot your life. My goal is if I do my job right, I'm going to find 2 or 3 things that you should start doing, 2 or 3 things you should stop doing, and then 2 or 3 things that I want to rearrange your schedule. So you're doing the right thing, but probably at the wrong time for your neurobiology. This is what's so great about what we've learned over the past 20 years is, this is what's an art of impossible, is we have a complete map of cognitive peak performance in the brain now. We know what it is. We know the order of the sequence. The data is getting really, really robust for training these things.
I want to just mention something that you taught me years ago, which I want to pass along to everybody listening, which is the greatest writers in the world complete a single finished page per day.
About a page a day.
Yeah. I've thought about that 1,000 times.
Well,
since you've said
to me, it was the unlocking. So
could you just for those who are prospective writers?
Let me tell you the story, because the story is amazing. So I was in grad school at Hopkins, and I got to study under Stephen Dixon. He's a name a lot of people don't know, but he very distinguished writer, won the National Book Award, has done a lot of stuff. But at the time, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time, he was the most published fiction author in history. And Chekhov had the record before him, had like 250 things. Stephen had published 650 short stories, novels, books. It was the massive productivity.
Wow.
On top of that, he taught at Hopkins, so he wasn't writing full time. He was teaching, and he had a very, very, very sick wife. She was in a wheelchair. She needed a tremendous amount of care.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, how the hell did this guy, like, he's got a full-time job and he's got a really sick wife and he's not rich, so he doesn't have full-time care. He's doing the work. How the hell is he so productive? And I asked him. He said, it's really simple. I write a page a day and I edit what I wrote the day before. And if you do that 365 days a year, you've written a book. And I was like, oh, okay. And so from that point on, I write 500. When I'm starting a book, it's 500 words a day, which is about a little over a page. I'll bump it up to like 700 or 800 words in the middle because it's easier and you know more what you're doing. At the end of the book, it's about 1,000 words a day. But like I published 16 books.
Yeah.
Probably, this was a bunch of years ago, but they tried to add up something like 5 million published words. And there's an equal amount of unpublished words, right? So and it's that formula, right? So
and I love that. And I think about that. So when I wake up in the morning where my mind is the clearest and I've got the most energy, the first thing I do when I wake up, and I typically wake up before my alarm, is I do a gratitude practice.
Yep.
It's like, thank you for the amazing day ahead, what I can do in this world. And then I focus on what am I excited about today? What's the big thing? And this morning it was like spending this time with you and having an awesome conversation and sharing your wisdom with the world. And it's those golden hours in the earliest. And it's,
Well, there's another thing. Let me ask you this question. Do you find when we're working on a book and you're waking up and you're writing and you're focused on that, are you happier throughout the day than if you're not?
Probably, because I feel like I've made a significant. I'm a accomplishment junkie, right? And so when I feel like I've won the day in the first 2 hours, right?
Won. But the other thing I think is also that's equally important that people don't realize. I like to go from bed to desk in under 5 minutes, and the reason is when you wake up. So flow, if we're talking about networks, brainwaves, flow takes place on the border between alpha and theta. Alpha is daydreaming mode. Theta is REM sleep or focus. It's on the alpha theta borderline. By the way, that aha moment. So that's always takes place inside a gamma wave. Gamma is coupled to theta. So if the brain can't get to theta, you can't have an aha insight. So one of the reasons you have more aha insights in flow is because it perches you on the edge in that theta state. You're on the edge of aha insight. You're ready to have a breakthrough. But the alpha theta borderline, you wake up in alpha. Your brain wakes up in alpha. So as soon as it gets awake, alert, excited, that's high beta. It's hard to move back down to theta. It's a much slower wave. But if you go like bed to desk and immediately drop into flow, focus your attention and start working on something, get sucked in, it's easier to drop into flow that way. And I find it's not just that I used to think it was just the goal stuff. Like I'm very goal oriented, and if I win my day, that's huge. But it's also if I tame my brain right out the gate and teach it to focus and don't let it run wild.
Whip that brain.
Yeah, no, I mean to me it's the two together. And if I can be a little creative in the writing, like that's the recipe for a perfect day.
Amazing. Yeah, you have done an amazing job. I'll call it your moonshot of putting flow on the world's conversation.
I will say we are now writing the textbook, myself, my chief science officer, and another neuroscientist, for the field of applied performance neuroscience, which is essentially the field that, me and a bunch of other people.
There was no conversations around this.
None of this. It didn't exist. So to me, like the moonshot, I always said my goal was to put flow science or flow research on a hard science footing. Like I wanted to bring it into the realm of neurobiology and make it really, really real. I didn't actually realize I was going to end up inventing a field, right? Like that was a weird one. But it wasn't just me. It was a bunch of us who were thinking about altered states of consciousness as tools for performance. And, get the word. I want to go back to the psychophys paper because here's a weird one for mindset, but this is also in the field.
So the psychophys paper released today?
No, this is a year ago, but this is just a great example of applied performance neuroscience and the weird stuff we're discovering. So this wasn't a flow study, it was a mindset study. And we wanted to know people who love exercise, what does it look like in their brain versus people who hate exercise? Yeah. And we discovered that people who love exercise literally process exercise and all the information in a totally different part of the brain than people who don't like exercise. And I've
shifted myself.
Well, that was the point I was trying to make. Is it turns out it works like a mindset, and you can shift it, and you can. So we looked at that.
I linked exercise to longevity.
Mm-hmm. And that's what shifted it for you. I mean, you were always, but I mean, I remember back, at least in like 2007, 2008, like I remember coming to LA and going for runs with you on the beach.
But this is different.
Now you love it and you're into it.
I'm 5 days a week in the gym with weights, and it's part of who you establish this is who I am, and I'm this because. I'm gonna win that arm wrestle. We're gonna continue that arm wrestle after
for the rest of our lives.
But this is who I am, and my longevity mindset fuels that desire for exercise. You're training up your most critical asset
in creativity, which is this skill that at least for the next 10 to 15 years until the AIs get, and we don't know, but I'm more optimistic than you are. By the way, this is the first time in history where I am more optimistic than Peter. I'm usually this cynical bastard who has to ground our books in reality because Peter's the wild-eyed boy from Free Cloud.
Oh, no, I'm optimistic about AI crushing our creativity. I've had to talk you into books.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Yes,
our first book, Abundance. I tried to write a book with you about space first, which was a failed attempt. And then,
but abundance. I mean, you didn't have to talk me into abundance because I was looking at the environmental side of it.
Yeah, you were.
I was worried it was going to be too ungrounded.
You were like, I have other things I'm working.
Well, no, I
had to disrupt.
No, you did. I was working, and I never went. I was working on a Richard Granger, who's at Dartmouth. He's a neuroscientist. We were going to co-write a book. I'm really glad we didn't. I would have gotten I wasn't smart enough yet I hadn't educated myself enough. I would have gotten my ass kicked. There were like 3 other projects, and you came in and you were the lowest ranking one in the beginning, but like you rapidly climbed up there. But it was really like when you presented the ideas to me, because I had been looking, it hadn't been. You were really sweeping. I mean, obviously I'd been a tech science writer for 20 years at that point, so it wasn't I was ignorant about it, but I care about plants, animals, and ecosystems. Yeah. So I was like, how do we apply technology to plants, animals, and ecosystems? How do we use technology to save plants, animals, and ecosystems? And you were really, especially then, really focused on the X Prize, using technology to help humanity, right? So I thought, like, when you came in, I was like, holy crap, we each got half of the puzzle. And you had the good overarching tech framework. I had a little bit of the science and the psychology and the cognitive, all that stuff. It was really, I mean, it was an incredibly fortuitous partnership because each of us had components of this that we absolutely had to bring together.
And then it took me about a year to get you on board with our latest book.
Oh, longer. I think you've been working on for 2 to 3 years on this one.
Are you happy we were doing it?
I'm so happy. This book is so fun. As I said, like, not only one, because you have to understand though, it's still I mean, the new book, just so people know, in Abundance, we made the argument that, hey, exponential technology gives us the chance to raise global standards of living for every man, woman, and child on the planet. Yeah. And man, were there naysayers, right? Yeah. Like that was the hardest argument to make out loud. And even, I mean, Christ, you opened TED, and that guy who followed you, right? Like they followed. They couldn't even put you on the stage at TED and let you talk. They had to like have a counter argument immediately afterwards, right? And now it's 15 years later. The most astounding thing to me is how the amount of when you talk about basic standards of living going up and up, and I mean it's
been insane.
The data is sort of astounding.
It is astounding,
shocking,
and
nobody realizes.
We are the frog boiling in the proverbial water.
It's the craziest.
But by the way, just so folks know, this is a book that will come out in 2026.
2026, probably at Abundance 360.
March 2026. And so don't go looking for it right now.
But if you want an early copy, I'm bribable. www.flowalliance.co/bribes.
In all seriousness, good luck on Flow Alliance.
Thank you, sir.
On the Alliance. I know it is something which can level up people in extraordinary fashion.
Yeah, thank you, sir.